Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ruth Griffith. Thank you for joining Snow Owl Libraries for Framed, How Film and TV Shape Our Perception of Arabs and Arab Culture with Zeki Hamid. First, some housekeeping. Your mics are muted. Please use the chat box to ask questions, and we'll use the chat on our end to share links to any lists and websites mentioned today. As Zeki is presenting, we'll have time for questions, so we'll just take them as they come. We'll get to as many of them as we can. If you would like to turn on captions for this event, we will drop those instructions in the chat box. This event is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel with captions in a week or two. And now let's introduce this evening's program and speaker. Zeki Hamid will talk about the stereotypes of Arabs perpetuated in film and TV and highlight the progress that's been made in the past few years. He will also share some of his own experiences as an actor in New York City after 9/11. Zeki is Director of Community Engagement at KUOW Public Radio, focusing on promoting diverse narratives in the larger media landscape and highlighting underrepresented voices through radio programs, classes, public programs, and presentations. He has taught mass media and film courses at a local college, specializing in introducing multi-ethnic films and points of view to course curriculum. A Palestinian immigrant from Jordan, Zeki has served on the board of trustees for the Arab Center of Washington. Zeki, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is great. I'm really excited about this and coming to talk to you all. A little bit of more background on me. So I was born and raised in Amman, Jordan, but I am Palestinian. Both my parents are Palestinian and had a typical journey of being in the western part of what is now Israel and going to the West Bank, living in refugee camps for about 13 years, and then after the 1967 war, going to Jordan. That's where I was born and raised. I lived in Beirut for a couple of years. After graduating high school, I went to Beirut. And in 1994, I came to the United States because we had a green card approved. And I came here to sign papers. And I just really never went back. And I had stayed in the United States since. I was in upstate New York. And then I went to community college there in Troy, and then transferred to SUNY Albany, the State University of New York in Albany. Graduated with a degree in theater, and then went to Delaware, the University of Delaware, for the professional theater training program, and became an actor. I worked as an actor and with different theaters and Shakespeare festivals, stuff like that around the country. Settled in Seattle around 2006. And my career took me in different directions. And now I've been working in radio at KUOW, which is an NPR station here in Seattle, and I've been doing that for a little over 5 years now. And I'm the director of community engagement there. So that's a little bit about my background. Ruth mentioned also that I did work as an actor in New York, and I will talk a little bit about that experience as we go through this presentation. If you have any questions, just pop it in the chat. I'll do my best to keep monitoring the chat to answer any questions, and we'll definitely have some time towards the end. So right now it's Arab American Heritage Month, so I want to talk a little bit about that. So give some, excuse me. So really, what is an Arab? And that's a really good question. And an Arab is an ethnic category defined by being from or having heritage from one of several Arabic-speaking countries in Southwest Asia or Northern Africa, and identifying as Arabs. There are 22 Arab countries, and I come from the Southwest Asian part of the Arab world, which I said I'm Palestinian, but I also grew up in Jordan, and I still have dual citizenship between the U.S. and Jordan. So that's what really defines an Arab. And the interesting thing there is saying and identifying as Arab, because not everybody who lives in the Arab world actually identifies as Arab. The common thing that binds us all together really is language rather than religion. Some statistics and misconceptions. Roughly about 4 million Arab Americans reside in America today, so it's not a whole lot compared to how many people we have in the country. But the interesting thing is, about 15% of people brought to the Americas during the slave trade were from Arab and Muslim origins. So we don't really have an exact number about how many people come from that part of the world here, because a lot of these statistics are lost. But yeah, about 15% brought to the American slave trade were from Arab and Muslim origins. Not all Arabs are Muslim, and a majority of the world's Muslims are not Arab. There's actually a sizable Christian population in the Arab world, as well as some other religions like the Druze. That's a sizable population in Lebanon, for example. Even though the majority are Muslim, but not all Arabs are Muslim. But the majority of the world's Muslims are not Arabs. Indonesia, Pakistan, that part of the world there have many more Muslims than we do in the Arab world. So speaking about that, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey are not Arab countries. Those are usually get confused with Arab countries, but we might share some things, maybe some religious aspects of it, maybe some cultural things, but definitely they're not Arab countries. We do not speak the same language, and they're not part of the Arab world. Arabs are diverse in culture, religion, and physical appearance. We are definitely not a monolith. As I said, there are 22 Arab countries. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of diversity there. So you go to Jordan, you're going to see something very different than you see, for example, in Saudi Arabia or the Gulf or Egypt or Morocco and so on. So there's a lot of diversity there. And one thing I want to mention about language. So as I said, what unites the Arab world is the Arabic language. However, the dialects and accents are so different between these different Arab countries that it becomes very hard for us to understand each other unless we are speaking in the classical Arabic. So if I go to Morocco right now, for example, I will tell you that I will have a very hard time understanding people in Morocco, even though I'm fluent in Arabic. And the reason I understand some dialects is because of TV. So Egypt has a really robust film and TV industry, and we used to get, when we were living in Jordan, so many of these Egyptian films, TV shows, plays. So that dialect is ingrained in my head, and that's the main reason why I understand that Egyptian dialect very much. But when I was living in Beirut one time, there was a play that came, and it was a touring production from Egypt, and I know some friends of mine went, and they came back and they said, I couldn't understand a word they said because the dialect is very, very different. So just wanted to highlight that. I want to talk about some of the stereotypes that is associated with Arabs and Arab Americans. One is that we're Muslim only. Obviously, that is said, that's not true. There is a sizable Christian population as well as some other religions. And within that, actually, not all of us observe the religion. So that's the next point, next stereotype, that we are very conservative and religious. So I grew up Muslim because it was just really part of the culture. However, I don't really practice, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really believe. It's Ramadan right now, and as you can see, I'm not observing. Not everybody does. My family is not religious at all. They never have been. We used to practice some things just because it was part of the culture and part of everyday life. But to be perfectly honest, religion doesn't mean that much to me in my life right now. So that's definitely a stereotype. There are a lot of people that are very the opposite of that. Here's an interesting one. It says we're anti-women's freedom. Obviously, that's not true. That is just one of the stereotypes. I'm going to pause for just a second here because we have a question here that I think is very good. Does the Shiite Sunni distinction affect the Black Muslim movement in the USA? So that's a really good question, and I'm not sure I can answer it, to be honest. But what I could say is that the Shiite Sunni distinction, the reason that ended up happening, the two sects, goes all the way back to when the Prophet Muhammad was on his deathbed. So when he died, there was a sect that wanted a man named Abu Bakr to become the first caliphate. And take over. But there were a group of people that wanted Ali, who was related to the Prophet, to become the next leader of Muslims, and they became known as the Shiites. The Shiites means partisans. They were the partisans of Ali, and that's really when the split happened between Shiites and Shiites and Sunnis, and that distinction still is around today, and it has caused some conflicts in some parts of the world. But I wish I could answer the question whether they affect the Black Muslim population here. To my knowledge, that most Black Muslims here are adhere to the Sunni sect rather than the Shiite. The Shiites are really a minority worldwide, but I'm not sure how that quite affects it. Moving on with this here. Oops, 1 second. There we go. That Arabs are anti-LGBTQ. Definitely not true. There is a LGBTQ population in the Arab world, but I will admit that they cannot freely practice it in certain spaces. Definitely not in the more religious countries like Saudi Arabia or the Gulf. A lot of them will have to be in the closet, but there are definitely a segment of the Arab world that do belong to the LGBTQ community. There are some really terrific writers also that belong to that community that are writing right now, but it has been an uphill battle. Think about some of the more conservative states that we have here in the United States, but they do exist, and definitely Arabs are not all anti-LGBTQ. Another stereotype that Arabs live in poverty and without technology. That's definitely not true. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to the Gulf right now, you go to Jordan, all of that, it's so incredibly modern, and it's not just the sand dunes and tents and that, like you see in a lot of movies. Another question here that came in: when you say the Gulf, which countries are you referring to? Yeah, thank you for that. So the Gulf, we have the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. Those are the Gulf countries. They're mostly oil-producing countries. I love this quote by a Nigerian writer called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She says, "The problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete." And I really, really love that, because some of these stereotypes, yeah, there are, so when you look at all of these, Muslim, of course, there are Muslims. Conservatives, yes, there are. Anti-women's freedom, I'm sure there are people like that as well. Anti-LGBTQ, yes, they do exist. But that is not the full story. It's just an incomplete story that we choose to tell about the Arab world. One more question here. Oh, no, that's not a question. Okay, moving on. So our perceptions are obviously influenced by pop culture. This is where we get the view of anything, really. It's a lot of it is influenced by pop culture. I grew up in Jordan. I had a certain idea of the United States because of the shows from America that came to the Arab world, and of course, it was not a truly representative view of America. So when I emigrated here, I was really truly shocked, and I was like, oh, we had certain shows that we were getting there that gave us an idea of what the United States is, but there was so much more to it. And so the same thing goes here with how we perceive the Arab world. So historically, white men dominated Hollywood. That's who is in the writing room, that's who's in the director's chair. So we are influenced by what their world reality is. So according to the 2021 UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report, so fantastic report comes out each year, people of color approached or exceeded proportionate representation in two key areas among film leads and total actors. So that's a really, really good progress. So we're seeing actors on screen and on the big screen as well, leads and total actors increasing and coming towards their proportionate representation. So we have about 40% of the country are people of color. So we have now total actors about 42%, film leads, close to 40%. So that's really, really good progress. However, in the two remaining arenas, people of color remained underrepresented despite gaining ground on their white counterparts since the last report. And those two areas are directors and writers. And to me, that's the most important place where you want to see representation, because it's the writers and directors that really shape our perception of the world. So we have definitely a lot much more room to gain there. Quick question here: are Kurds Arabs, and are the Jewish Kurds distinguished by heredity or by religious faith? So the Kurds are not considered Arabs. They have their own language that they speak, which is Kurdish, but they do live in a lot of Arab countries. So for example, they do live in around Iraq and Iran, which is not an Arab country, as we said, but so they have those areas there, but they are not considered Arabs. And the Jewish Kurds, I believe, I don't quite know. I don't know how to answer that question. This is just a guess here, which is that Jews are always defined by their religion rather than anything that kind of supersedes anything else. One more question here before we go on. It says, where do you draw the line between a stereotype that you consider definitely not true and behavior that is objectively observable? For example, women's right in UAE is a fairly obvious problem, even if it isn't in other countries, and part of the stereotype might be informed from those places. It's a good question. I don't know quite where do I draw the line there. All I can say is that if I would compare it to what we have in the United States, I mean, we have things like that here where behavior is objectionable. Some might find it very objectionable. You look at some of the anti-LGBTQ laws that are being passed in certain states. That is kind of similar to how some of these laws are passed in some Arab countries. So all I can say about that, I guess, is that the diversity of that world is definitely there, and it's not unlike the diversity that we have here. Okay, so now I want to get into, we're going to watch some videos to look at the stereotypes of Arabs in film and in TV. So we're going to go all the way back to 1921 here. This is Rudolph Valentino's The Sheik. So let's watch a little bit of that. Okay, I'm gonna cut it here. So a couple of things to notice here. First of all, Rudy Valentino is definitely not an Arab, but he is portraying one. So that is definitely frowned upon these days. But it wasn't back in 1921. But I want to you to look at those stereotypes, and you have Rudy Valentino as the harsh Arab who is preying on a white woman. That is definitely one of the tropes that you see a lot. Arabs portrayed as angry, as dominating, as preying on people, expecting to have everything that they want. Here you have the tense, the riches that are associated with it. So that's definitely kind of a trope, and that has persisted. This is back in 1921. You definitely see it in pop culture and media today as well. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of make sure you pay attention to it. And it's interesting because when you think about it, it didn't start here, obviously. Edward Said, a writer and a scholar that has passed away about 20 years ago, used to teach at Columbia University in New York, and he wrote a book called Orientalism. And what he meant by that was the perception that we have of the East, or what they used to call the Orient, even though people have either never been there or never even met somebody from that part of the world. So where does that all come from? And that's what his book kind of delves into. But you'll see, as if you read that book, that it goes way back. It goes to art and books, and before we even get to film and TV. So that perception has been perpetuated for a long time. If we're going to go here to 1941, Ali Baba, the Mad Dog of the Desert. These are cartoons. These are Looney Tunes cartoons portraying Arabs, as you see here, angry, the Mad Dog of the Desert. Here's another one here, the common joke about camels, rent a camel, you drive. Full disclosure, I love camels, but and if you see my house, there are statues of camels all over the place. I just love them. But that is, part of the stereotype here, that and making fun of that. Moving on here, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard or probably seen Aladdin. So I want to just play part of the introductory song here and then point something out. So let's just listen to that first.
I come from a land, from a faraway place, where the caravan camels roam, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. When the winds from the east.
Okay, so I wanted to point out that line where they say, "We'll cut off your ear if we don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." So when that came out, people had a problem with that, and there was I believe a lawsuit to Disney saying that that line should be taken away. And what happened is that they changed, when the DVD came out, they changed the song, and I'm going to play part of that song and see if you notice what the change was. Oops, sorry about that.
From a land, from a faraway place, where the caravan camels roam, where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
Okay, So if you notice that, they just removed that "will cut off your ear if we don't like your face" and replaced it with a line talking about how hot the desert is. But yet they kept the line that said it's barbaric, but hey, it's home. I guess that was their idea of a compromise. There was another complaint about the characters and how they were portrayed, and Disney said, well, the thing is about Aladdin is that Aladdin and Jasmine are also Arab. So, so I don't know why you're kind of complaining, but the interesting thing is that they don't have accents, and only the bad Arabs, so to speak, had accents. But Jasmine and Aladdin had perfectly American accents, and so I think there's a difference there. The thing is, I still love the movie. I think it's a really lovely movie. It's definitely problematic. It has a lot of problematic things, but some of those problematic issues were addressed when the live action movie came out with Will Smith. And I do believe a big part of that is because they had Arab writers in the room, so they kind of dealt with some of that. Before we move on, just a couple of questions here. How do I feel about the music? Yeah, the music is fine with me because I mean, it's definitely stereotypical, right? It's you would expect that somebody is playing some kind of flute instrument and a snake is going to come out, which is really interesting because that doesn't really exist in the Arab world. That's more in India, but you can see, and I think you see some of that snake stuff in this movie as well. So it's conflating the rest of the world, that part of the world all together. It's something that you'll notice as I go through this presentation as well, that there's a lot of conflating there, getting actors, for example, that are not of Arab descent playing Arabic characters. That's kind of typical for Hollywood. And let's see, the language challenges about understanding the dialects. Can you read them okay, or is the writing more standard? I think if I understand your question correctly here, we're just talking about the dialects. They're still speaking English, but with a dialect. So, yeah. So I'm not quite sure if I understand that question, to be honest. But okay, I'm gonna move on. Here's another movie that I'm sure a lot of you love. I don't know, maybe you don't. I certainly love it. I absolutely love it. But I want you to pay attention to how casual the racism is in this scene.
Safe now. Everything's lead lined. Don't you lose those tapes now. See that? The record. Let's put this back here. There we go. What? I almost forgot my luggage. I mean, who knows if they've got cotton underwear in the future. Oh, I'm allergic to all synthetics.
The future? That's where you going?
That's right. 25 years into the future. I've always dreamed of seeing the future, looking beyond my years, seeing the progress of mankind.
Why not?
I'll also be able to see who wins the next 25 World Series.
Doc.
Huh?
Look me up when you get there.
Indeed, I will. Roll 'em. I, Dr. Emmett Brown, am about to embark on an historic journey. What am I thinking of? I almost forgot to bring extra plutonium. How did I ever expect to get back? One pellet, one trip. I must be out of my mind. What is it, Arnie? Oh, my God. They found me. I don't know how, but they found me. Run for it, Marty! Who? Who do you think? The Libyans! Look at my left!
Holy shit!
Oh, roll their fire!
stop that here. So as you see, he got the plutonium from Libyans, obviously part of the Arab world. And I know this was in the 80s, and Libya was definitely in the news back then. So it was an easy target there. But it was so casual, the way they kind of slipped that in there, that you don't really think twice about it. And so the idea is, oh yes, well, Libyans, Arabs, they're definitely terrorists, dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. So very casual racism there. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next clip here. Oops. Father of the Bride 2. This is actually pretty funny. Let's look at this and I'll speak about it.
Then one Saturday morning, we got a bite. A big bite.
George, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Habib.
Hello, how do you do? Nice to meet you. This is my son Matty and his friend Justin.
We like house very much. When you can move out?
Excuse me?
The Habibs would like to buy the house, George. It's exactly what they've been looking for.
Yes, when you can move. We need house a week from Wednesday. And my wife wants flour dishes in kitchen. You sell, we pay top dollar.
For the house, top dollar?
Dishes. For the dishes. For the house, we pay what you ask, no more. But we need house a week from Wednesday or no deal.
Gee, that's 10 days from now. It's kind of quick. We've lived here 18 years. I don't know if we can get every...
So the Habibs, Arabs that are coming to buy the house, they are, they're definitely not the good guys here. But the trope that I want to point out here is that the woman, as soon as she started talking, which was gibberish, the husband shouts gibberish back at her. So one, they're not really using any actual Arab language. It's just gibberish. And it emphasizes the trope that the men are dominating. They don't allow the women to speak up. So that kind of really reinforces that. So that's something that I wanted to point out. Cannonball Run 2, not 1, but 2. I don't know if you remember this movie, a really, really old movie. And it has, again, a clip that really enforces all of these negative stereotypes. Take a look.
That's the first time we took an order by phone. It's hard to understand you.
When I called you, I was doing 140 miles an hour. That was 6 lamb burgers, 4 shish kebabs, a side order of couscous, and 2 milk. No, how much?
$6.75.
Here, my desert blossom. Give the change. Have you ever considered joining a harem? I shall return for you after the race. What? Get a physical. I shall return, my little thing.
Okay, so that actor was actually Arab. He's Lebanese. But it chose to really act in a movie and go to the, do these negative stereotypes. And I completely know that when I was in New York, when I was an actor, we were split. A lot of us said we definitely would want to do these roles and we don't care. This is our career. We wanted to advance in it. And some of us said, no, that's a little too humiliating and we're not going to do it. This is a judgment-free zone for me, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to judge the people who want to go and make money on that and do that. That's their decision. Mine was, I was in that camp for a bit, and then I'll tell you this incident that happened to me that really changed my mind. I was being sent out by just sent by agents on auditions that really all reinforced all the negative stereotypes, whether it is a hot dog vendor or a cab driver or a terrorist, etc. I was always being sent out on those. And one time I got sent out for a movie, a TV movie from Spike TV. And I don't even know if Spike TV is still a channel or not, but it was back then. And it was around Christmas time. And when I got, I got the sides and I went to audition, and it was a spoof. And they wanted to say like Osama bin Laden hijacking Christmas. That was what the movie was about. And they gave me the slides, and I started the audition, and it was, I had Santa Claus tied up, and I started singing, instead of Santa Claus is coming to town, Osama is coming to town. And after I finished that audition, they said, do you know how to, can you read Arabic? And I said, yes, I can. So they handed me a slide. They said, can you do it in Arabic now? And I look at the slide and it's completely nonsensical. So I don't know where they got that translation from. But I said, this doesn't make any sense, because all of the Arab letters are linked together for the most part. This is just separate letters. It doesn't make sense. And I said, well, can you just sit in the corner there and just you write it, you translate it, and then we'll do the audition again. And as I sat down and as I started doing that, and then that was the point where I said, this is just so humiliating. And the way that he was talking to me, and, some of his instructions is like, oh, that's good. Whatever it is that you Arabs do, more anger, more this. And I just realized that how humiliating this was. And I just got up and I left. And that's when I made the decision. I'm not going to put myself in these situations again. That's just not what I choose. Some people choose them, as I said, no judgment here. But as you saw in that Cannonball 1-2, that actor chose to do so. That was from, he wasn't MASH, by the way. So, great actor. Let's move on to this, True Lies. This is an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Again, really, really fun movie, but it's just the kind of indiscriminate racism is really overt. So check this one out.
Give me the key, and you won't get hurt. I give you my word.
No way, you wacko! Help me!
انت من هونيك.
Okay, we're gonna stop it here. And so again, as I said, it's a fun movie, but it's definitely has these elements of racism and racist scenes in there. The guy who was playing the main terrorist is not an Arab actor, but he was playing one, and that's what I had mentioned. I was being sent in for roles that Latino characters, even though I'm definitely not Latino, don't speak Spanish, but in some of their minds, the people behind these movies and TV shows, well, you have some color, why don't you go and try this out? I'm pretty sure that there was a person who was Asian in that clip, that or the part of Asia that's not the Arab world, but so you want to mention that. But those are, a lot of them were just jokes. There's a lot of buffoonery in there, but then we get to something that is a lot more serious. I'll skip this one here just for time's sake. This one is a lot more serious. American Sniper. This movie, when that came out, it was nominated for an Oscar. Bradley Cooper played the main character. Clint Eastwood directed this movie. And it talks about a sniper, an American soldier that had the most kills in military history. So he was very good at his job. And this was during the Iraq War. So I just wanted to let you see this scene, and then I'll tell you a quick story about it.
About some things you said. Tell kids I love them. I love you too.
pick it up. Don't you fucking pick it up. Son of a bitch. Fucking drop it.
When this movie came out, I was in Spokane to go give a presentation, and it was in the evening, and me and a friend of mine went to see it in the afternoon. When that scene happened, theater was not crowded at all, but there was somebody sitting behind us, and when this scene happened, all I heard was the guy behind me saying, "Shoot him." And that made my heart sink, because I was looking at this child and I was seeing myself in that child. But the person behind me just saw nothing but a terrorist. And that's the effect that these movies and TV and etc. have on our psyche and have on our minds, is that we cease to see the humanity behind people, and we just see something like a terrorist. So that's why I said this is the more serious things rather than just the buffoonery. Quick question before we move on here. Says, has Mr. Hamid ever compared Arab stereotypes by American movie makers with racial, religious, gender stereotypes of other groups? For example, the first group that comes to my mind are Native American, cowboys, and Indians. Sexy blondes get stereotyped, Italians, Black, Christians, people who believe in UFOs. In fact, what group doesn't receive stereotypical TV and film? Just a thought. This is a great thought, absolutely. And especially with American Indians, the way that they have portrayed in American cinema is really awful, and there's movies have been done about that. There's a presentation been done about that, absolutely. But the and same with Black Americans, Italians, absolutely. Stereotypes exist all over the place. I can't speak to those because that's not really my expertise or my background. All I can do is concentrate on what I know, which is the way that and point that out. But absolutely, that those stereotypes do exist, and I don't really care for like the kind of comparison in terms of who has it worse, because I'm not in that business of the what some people call the oppression Olympics. So I just kind of speak to what I know. But those stereotypes, 100% they exist, and I've seen some really terrific presentations and movies and documentaries about that negative representation. I'm gonna let's see, skip. Oh, I had one more scene from American Sniper, but for time's sake, I'm gonna skip it. But I want to mention about this here. One of the things about American Sniper is that there's no character in there that was not American that came up in a positive light. This scene here, which I said I'm gonna skip over, but you think that these are good human beings, and they turn out to be just as bad as the others in the movie. So you start to attach yourself to somebody, think, oh, okay, well, these are good guys. Turns out they're terrorists too, and that's so. There's nobody there, not a single Arab in that movie that came out in a positive light, which is some of my criticism about that movie. Now I want to move to a few minutes here and just talk about some Arab movies or American TV shows that were written by Arabs. This one is called Paradise Now. This is by Hani Abu Assad, who is a Palestinian director, and this was nominated for an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film about 12 years ago or so. And so the film is about two people that have been recruited by extremists in the West Bank, in Palestine, to go complete a suicide mission in Israel. And one of them gets cold feet and runs away. This scene is two people looking for him, and they have a discussion about resistance and what form that takes.
شو سبكم؟ ليش بتعملوا هيك؟
ما عادش في خيار تاني. إذا ما نقدرش نتكافئ بالحياة نتكافئ بالموت.
إذا عندك القدرة على إنه تموت وتقتل من شان التكافؤ، ليش بدوش على إمكانيات بالحياة عشان تعيش بالتكافؤ كمان؟
كيف؟ منظمة حقوق الإنسان تبعتك؟
هاي واحدة من الإمكانيات. عقائل هيك ممنعت الإسرائيلي عذر إنهم يدالوا يقتلوا فينا.
والله العظيم إنك عنياتك. مش حرية بدون كفاح. لازم حدا يضحي بحاله، طول ما في ظلم واحتلال في تضحية.
هذا مش تضحية، هذا انتقام. هيك بتقتل وبتصير زيهم. وببدل في الفرق بين الضحية والقتل.
الفرق انه بطل في عنا خيارات تانية كيف الناضل، يفتحوا لنا مجالات للنضال، لو في عنا طيارات كان بيكونش في عنا استشهاديين.
الفرق الوحيد انه اسرائيلي قوى بكثير عسكريا وانت مش قوي قدهم.
كان خلينا نكون متساويين بالموت، دائما راح يكون عندنا الجنة باذن الله.
ما في جنة، هاي خرا افكرها براسك.
استغفر الله العظيم، استغفر الله العظيم. الله يسامحك بس. لو انك مش بنت ابو عزام. مع كل هذا بفضل يكون عندي جنة في راسي، لأني أعيش حياة الجحيم اللي احنا عايشينها. احنا ميتين بالحياة. شو اللي وداك على الموت غير اللي أمر منه؟
وشو مع احنا اللي بنلقى؟ فكرك راح نربح هيك من وراء العمليات؟ انت مش شايف اللي بدك تعمله عم بخرب علينا كلنا وبحكي لإسرائيل ذريعة تكمل مشروعها.
يعني إذا ما فيش ذريعة إسرائيل رح توقف مشروعها.
ممكن. إذا بنرجع نحول المعركة لمعركة أخلاقية.
أنا مش فاهم كيف بدك تحول المعركة لمعركة أخلاقية، وإسرائيل ما فيش عندها أخلاق أصلاً.
دير بالك ولا بتصير.
So Paradise Now, what I love about this is definitely gives you a perspective that you are not going to see in typical American films. And they were talking about the occupation and resistance and freedom and the different approaches to it here. I love that scene, and I love that it ends with an Israeli checkpoint. So it kind of drives that point home about the oppression that they are feeling at that point because of the occupation. This is the same director, and the reason I want to put this is because there's so much joy in this clip. The Idol. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the show American Idol. Well, it's a worldwide franchise. So part of that franchise is from the Arab world. There's something called Arab Idol. And about 2013, I believe, there was this singer from Gaza, a wedding singer that lived in Gaza that wanted to audition for Arab Idol. Now, Gaza is controlled by the borders, Israel on one side and Egypt on the other. So the people there are essentially living in an open prison. They cannot go in or out. So this is a true story where this kid, the singer there, goes to Egypt. He kind of, smuggles himself into Egypt basically to go and audition. And he auditions, he gets in, and this is shot in Beirut, the show. So it then goes there and just becomes part of the final 20 and keeps on going and going and going until he wins the whole thing and becomes the pride of all Palestinians. So this director, Hani Abu Asad, wanted to make a story about this film. So this is the final scene, and what you'll see is the actor playing Muhammad Asaf, but then there was a moment that switches and it's all real footage, and I just want to show you that.
انت يلا يا محمد عجل.
طيب
بعد 5 دقايق اعلان نتائج.
الليلة دي 3 مشتركين بين الآلاف اللي اتقدموا قدروا يتجاوزوا كل المراحل والتحديات وبقوا على بعد خطوة واحدة بس من خط النهاية.
مشترك واحد بين الثلاثة. نيل أعلى نسبة تصويت ورح يكون نجم عرب ايدل. محمد عزام.
So it is so amazing to see Palestinians portrayed in moments of joy. You just don't see that in a lot of movies that involve Palestinians. Not even some of the ones that Palestinians make themselves. Being Palestinian is rooted in struggle. That's just the reality of it. But it's so important to be portrayed with the moments of joy because they do exist. So that's what I love about this movie. And the other thing is when it shows Arab Idol, I mean, you can see that it is very different than a lot of how Arabs are portrayed here. The music, the show, the lights, all of that is just wonderful. A couple of two more things I want to show you here. This one is a show on Hulu called Rami. Rami Youssef is this wonderful writer, director, and actor, and he created the show really about his life, which is a Muslim Egyptian family in New Jersey. And there's 3 seasons of it. It's very, very funny, and it's kind of disturbing in parts, but it's just really excellent writing, and it's so nuanced. So this is just the trailer.
Rami, do you want to stay alone forever?
Mom, you can't just walk up to a Muslim girl and start spitting game or something. What am I supposed to say? Hey, can I get your father's number?
Yes, why not?
This Ramadan, I really want to do it the right way, man. It's been a weird year. And I feel like if I can just do this the right way, I can figure my shit out. I'm not gonna look at porn, nothing. I just want to commit.
No porn. This guy says no porn.
It's gonna be tough.
No way. Impossible.
I'm going out.
Does anyone even care where Rami goes? You guys never ask him where he is.
He just told me he's going out.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
He literally gave you no information.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Love you, Mom.
Love you, Habibi.
I want to know who I am. I want to explore.
You're like the kids in Egypt. They throw down the government. Big revolution. Then what? No plan.
I don't know what I'm doing, man. I look at my parents and how strong they are and how they just know everything's gonna be okay because they have God. And yeah, I have sex even though I'm not married.
Where are you gonna go?
So what? That means I'm not a good Muslim? I'm just like trying to be good.
You jerk off too much.
So if you get a chance to check it out, I highly recommend this. It'll give you the point of view, actually multiple point of views of what life is like for this one family. It's just very funny, as said, heartwarming, kind of disturbing in parts, but it's excellent. But the great thing is, it's all written. It's directed by Arabs. It has Arab writers, Arab actors, so it gives you a much more nuanced idea of what life is like for an Arab and Muslim family here in the United States. And finally, I want to show you this. This is a show called Mo on Netflix. So Mohammed Amr, who's actually he was also in Rami, but had his own show here. It's on Netflix, and it's what I love about this show so much is that it has these dual identities that he occupies, being Palestinian and being a Texan, and how all of this kind of intersects together. It's absolutely fascinating. So here's a quick look at this. This is the trailer.
Mo, hi! Assalamu alaikum.
No, we don't have to do that. Why don't you sit
Great to see you.
Yeah, right.
Hey, you can keep your shoes on, Mo.
No, that's gross.
Oh. Well, come on in.
Yeah, what it do, folks? Yeah, I'm just riding in the Chevy with the roof low.
How you doing, brother? Let me show you something.
Hanging with the groove.
Why do you need to sell that crap?
Selling merch is the only thing I can do without papers. I need to support my family. Petro Emotion. It's my last one. It's my last one. Last one.
Real low.
Islam is real practical. You can talk to G.O.D. anytime.
You should go to church with me someday.
What is the Trinity, though? Please explain it to me.
What's el Padre, el Hijo, el Espíritu Santo? Amén, el Padre,
What is
el
it? No,
Hijo,
don't do
el
that.
Espíritu
No, astaghfirullah, don't do that.
ما لقيتش بكل البلد محامية فلسطينية ما لقيتش غير واحدة من بولندا.
الذكاء تشلح الكندرة طيب احكي لها. Said she really loves your hair.
Thank you.
She wants you to take your shoes off, but she wishes you weren't Polish.
Joking.
A lot of jokes. I've never been to Palestine. I don't have citizenship there. I don't have citizenship here. I'm like a refugee-free agent.
Would you like to try some chocolate hummus?
You say chocolate hummus? You just insulted my grandmother.
Lo siento, I did not know that hummus was Mexican.
You keep thinking that you have to do all this stuff alone, and you don't. You got us, and you got your family.
Hey, who the hell are you?
I got drugs in the car. Where I come from, olive theft is a huge problem.
Yeah, where's that?
Palestine?
Damn, that's a couple hours away.
No, not Palestine, Texas.
Israel, man. Israel.
Oh, it's Shalom. Yeah, it's a real branding issue.
That I love this show. Check it out. There's one more season coming out of it, so that's pretty great. Okay, so that's really the end of the presentation. We have some questions here. And let me see. Are these stereotypes fostered through Hollywood by the U.S. government, alphabet agencies like the CIA? Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I know that the CIA definitely engages in some of this content, but that's mainly to promote certain American propaganda overseas about like. So I know that. So the other way around, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But a lot of these are easy targets. But when you think about it, look at all the movies that portrayed Russians in negative light, and that was during the Cold War. You're actually starting to see that come back right now. So does the CIA have anything to do with that, or the FBI or anything? I really don't know. But movies really reflect the times that we're in. But the interesting thing here, for instance, you're starting to see some things coming up about Russians right now for obvious reasons. After 9/11, it was tons and tons about Arabs and Muslims. But you know what you don't really see right now is negative representations of, overtly negative about Chinese, and that's because the Chinese industry, film industry, is so big, and not that China. I mean, the American industry in China is so big, and and China won't show the movies that have these negative stereotypes associated with it. So you're not seeing a whole lot coming out from Hollywood to do with those negative stereotypes. So it's really interesting. It has a lot to do with money. Let's see other questions here. It says there's a scene in the film Traitor where this character Saeed is confused as a Mexican. He's involved in a heist. So this is good for his character. It was portrayed as funny. Does that stuff ever really funny? You know, I find humor in a lot of things, even though it's not really funny. I mean, you have to kind of laugh at yourself and laugh at because otherwise things become too serious. That's just the way I approach life. As I said, I've been confused for other ethnicities in the past. I've definitely been in situations where people just start, speaking Spanish to me, and I have to say, I really don't understand Spanish, So some of these situations might be lighthearted, but I'll give you an example of something that wasn't. When I first moved to the U.S., it's in 1994. The second job I ever got was at a local Burger King in upstate New York, and one of the assistant managers there was clearly racist, and one time there was a woman that came in and to apply for a job, and she was an immigrant, and he comes to me, he goes, "Hey, go talk to this woman because she doesn't speak English," so my first thought was like, oh, she must speak Arabic. And I go and I sit down with her and I go like, oh, okay, yeah, she doesn't speak Arabic, she's not an Arab. She might, I don't know where she was from. She might have been from Pakistan. She might have been from India. She might have been speaking Urdu, but I didn't know anything, understand it. And I went back to him, I was like, I'm sorry, we don't speak the same language. And he was just started saying things about being from the same part of the world, etc. So in those parts, they're definitely not funny. They are definitely harmful. I ended up quitting there, obviously, not too long after that. He would be, he's an assistant manager, was an assistant manager, and he'd be making fun of the way she speaks and all of that. And so some of these things are definitely not funny, but there are some things that you can take in good humor sometimes. Question here: am I involved in the selection of Arab movies for SIF? I'm actually not. I knew some people. I knew one of my friends used to work at SIF, but he no longer does there. But no, I'm not really part of the selection committee there. But that might be a good idea. Yeah, excellent. Any other questions that anybody has? Yeah, definitely feel free to ask any questions you have. I'm an open book. There's no question that's off limits here. I will say this: I always look at myself as a teacher, even because I work at KUW, but I also teach at Everett Community College, and but I think of myself as always a teacher. I'm always an open book. I always don't think really any questions are off limits. That's just part of the responsibility for me as being an immigrant and being an Arab, because if I'm not going to talk about it, then who will? So if you have anything, just let me know. What do I do at KW to help address these stereotypes? That's an excellent question. We talk a lot at KUOW about framing and how we're talking about something. So when we go through, we have something called a narrative screen, so that we encourage all of our reporters to use with their editors, and so they can look at a story through a racial equity lens and make sure that some of these harmful stereotypes aren't coming through. So we really scrutinize language, everything from single words to sentences, or entire articles. But how do we frame something? That's something that we talk a lot about. So that work is really ongoing. KAW is really committed to racial equity, and that I think that comes through our work, and we hear a lot. A big part of my job there is to listen to the audience and have conversations with them and connect them with the people creating content. So we hear a lot of criticism, and everything is taken into consideration. Everything is talked about. So that's the big part of my work, actually, is to address these stereotypes and make sure that we are representing people in an equitable way. But yeah, we really scrutinize language, and just really how we talk about any of this stuff. Any movie recommendations that are generous character development of Arab characters and not just stereotypes? So there are a lot of great Arabic movies, really anything by Hani Abu Asad, who directed The Idol and Paradise Now. He has another one called Omar, is really good. Some of the more like American movies that have good ones. The first one that comes to mind is called Three Kings, and it's an old movie. It's from the 90s, but it had to do with the Iraq War, the first Iraq War. That one's actually really, really good because it gives you different points of views, and it humanizes the Iraqis that are in there. They use Arab actors. Three Kings is a movie I definitely recommend. Trying to see what other ones that might be good. Yeah, that's the one that's coming to mind right now. Other than that, I would say you saw the two shows that I recommended there. But Arabic movies, really watch Arabic movies. I'll recommend a couple more here. There's two Jordanian movies. One is called Theeb. So it's Theeb. That was nominated for an Oscar actually not too long ago. But it talks about the desert life and nomads in the desert in Jordan. That was a really excellent film. Let's see what else. What's the other Jordanian movie? Oh, I'm so sorry, but that name is escaping me, but it's about a pilot, or a would-be pilot, somebody who is mistaken for a pilot. Yeah, I can't remember the name right now. Let's see, another question here. Oh, you can do it. That's right. There's a lot of use the library system. Absolutely. There's a big catalog in Snow Isle Library System of DVDs in Arabic for sure. Yeah, library system. The library is always your friend. It has so much good stuff. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, thank you, Becky. Captain Abu Ra'id. Yes, thank you so much. I love that movie. Oh my goodness. And my dad used to work for Royal Jordanian, which is the airline company there. So yes, that's the one. Let's see, my top tips for how to be more discerning regarding how Arabs are portrayed on screen or even in the news. I think people should really call out these stereotypes, or just question them at least when they are there. The news is a funny business. I mean, I'm in the media. Obviously, I'm in the news business, but especially TV, local TV news. There's some really good ones out there for sure, but there's a lot of segments that concentrate on a lot of negative things that are happening. But I would say just really question it out loud. So I mentioned a professor that wrote the book Orientalism, and he had a story one time that he told when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, and they wanted, and I think it was CNN or somebody that called him to come on the news to talk about that, and he said, why are you calling me? You know, I'm a comparative literature professor, so I don't have anything to do with terrorism. But and he didn't want to go and talk about it there. But that's just an example of just really questioning things and questioning them out loud. The curiosity I think is your best ally here. Edward Said's book, yes. Oh, good. You have Oriental. It's a long book, but if you check it out from the library, it's really informative. Even though it was written in the 70s, it's so incredibly informative right now. Question here, just one last question. Are the desert populations in the Middle East maintaining their numbers, or either increasing or decreasing? Oh, I would definitely say decreasing. A lot of those populations are becoming integrated into cities right now. I mean, they still maintain a presence, but they're definitely being integrated into cities. Well, thank you all very much. I really had a great time talking to you all.
Thank you so much, Zeki. This has just been one of our best presentations ever. It's just been wonderful having you here. I had to keep checking to make sure I was muted because I was busting out laughing in some of those clips. They were just a terrific selection of clips. I want to thank everybody in our audience for joining us and for submitting some great questions. I hope you enjoyed this program. I know I truly did. This event has been recorded and will be available on Snow Isle Library's YouTube channel in a week or two. And you can find recordings of other past events like this by visiting Snow Isle's website, clicking on events, and then clicking on event recordings. And with that, I wish you all a good night and have a great evening. Good night.
Bye, everybody.